Coming up, it's a scary disease that has no cure. Not yet, anyway. An annual effort to fight back is just around the corner, and we'll have the latest from the Tulsa Ballet. This and more next on Perspectives. Hello, everyone. What a summer, a grand summer we've had. Oh, I know it was a hot one, but the heat was offset by Porter peaches and Stillwell strawberries, sweet corn from the eastern part of the state, and of course, Vidalia onions from Georgia, along with plenty of homegrown tomatoes and okra. There were also county fairs and baseball and festivals of all stripes. That was the upside. The downside? Well, that was the usual suspects, of course. All the politics. And that was business as usual, except for the shootings and the stabbings and the name-calling and the racism. This is, of course, election campaign season, but that didn't explain away the steps backward that the current occupant of the White House seemed to be enjoying. Those squeals and tweets backed up by more than enough rumbling that could be heard across the country. Those sounds came from such former leaders as Abe Lincoln and Martin Luther King spinning in their graves. There was also an eerie silence of voices from the same political party as the current West Wing occupant that should have been standing up to those outlandish and reprehensible and deplorable statements and actions, meaning they agreed with what he said, or they were just too worried about holding on to their jobs to stand up and do the right thing. The Oklahoma delegation was especially quiet about it all. You see, in Oklahoma, a little battle is brewing now between the state administration and the Indian tribes. I need to point out that when the white man first stepped off the boat with the gift of smallpox to the folks already here, they started stealing land from the red men right away, and they'd go on to kill most of the buffalo for sport. Additionally, virtually all of the treaties that were carved out between the Indian tribes all across the country and the non-Indians in Washington would be broken by the great white fathers that designed them in the first place. Oh, and don't forget the forced removal, when Indians were driven from their homes like cattle to areas that held little promise of a future just so white men could grab the lands where the Indians once lived. Well, now the Indians in Oklahoma knew it as the Trail of Tears. After a time, oil was discovered in Oklahoma, a lot of it on inland land, which didn't sit well now with the great white fathers. Why, who ever heard of a rich Indian? Well, they couldn't drive the Indians from the land they'd driven them to in the first place, so they resorted to cheating and murder when they could. Don't take my word for it. Check out the writing, the works of the late Angie DeBow. And the folks in Washington couldn't understand people like the late Frank Phillips. That's right, the oil giant who treated Indians fairly, so much so that both sides made a great deal of money. Now, jump ahead a few years with the approval of state leaders, the Indians started playing bingo. That grew into a major gambling industry, and the crafty folks in Oklahoma City saw the handwriting on the wall and struck a deal with the Indian tribes so they could feature gambling as long as the white folks got a share. Both sides agreed to a percentage. That paid off big time for both. Now, it's funny how things change. Now, all the folks in Oklahoma City have decided it's time for a new gambling agreement, one that would give the state government more money. You see where this is going. Another treaty they want to break, or in this case, a contract they don't want to honor, because who knew the Indians were smart enough to be successful? The root of the problem is once again greed. The Indian tribes are united against this change, and understandably so. The final result? Well, sir, I'm going to bet on the Indians. There are too many people watching this time, no matter how the government lays out the case. It hasn't been decided yet, so step right up, folks. Place your bets. It's really going to get interesting around here. I'm Sam Jones, and that's my perspective. Up next, you can be a part in the fight against a terrible disease. More after this.